Next Sunday, we are going to come together as a church and celebrate this community. And that celebration is intentionally, strategically linked to the day that we ask all of you to renew your commitment to this community via a promise of financial support. Why do we want to celebrate this act of giving? Well, because we believe that giving, and especially giving to sustain and nurture and grow a community such as this, should be an act of joy. Joy overflowing because it springs forth, gushes out from the deep wells of love that we all have for this very special community. I love this church. And I know that many of you seated here today, many of you who are members of this congregation, I know that you love this church too. That this community has captured your heart in some way. And I'm here today, specifically and explicitly, to make the case for why you should give this church your hard-earned money. It is, without a doubt, the easiest sermon that I will write all year, because this sermon practically writes itself. Last year at this time, I framed your giving in business terms. I talked about your financial commitment to UUCJ as an investment. Last year, I said, if you are seated here in this sacred hall this morning or participating in this worship remotely, then I know already something about you. I know that there are things in life that you consider to be of ultimate value. I know you believe there exist things in this life more valuable than money. I went on to say last year that UUCJ takes your money and then converts it into those things of ultimate value. We are like a factory. We take your time, treasure, and talent, and we transform those raw materials into concrete manifestations of love, justice, and compassion, things you cannot put a price tag on, things that each of you here today believe are worth more than money. And I believe that is still a true statement. When you invest in UUCJ, you are investing in our mission, changing the world through compassionate service and authentic connection. Now, I literally do not have time this morning to list and fully explain all the various ways that we as a community do that, but I will quickly highlight a few. In terms of social justice, one of the most important things we do is support iCare. iCare is the Interfaith Coalition for Action, Reconciliation, and Empowerment. It is a coalition of approximately 40 congregations across all of Jacksonville who come together to press our local leaders, to compel our local leaders to action, to make justice a palpable reality in this city. iCare attacks social problems at their root. For example, iCare doesn't simply seek to feed or clothe the homeless, as important as that work is. But what we do through iCare is we attack the root of the problem by attacking poverty itself. Some ways that iCare does this is by supporting initiatives to create sustainable wealth in the poorest sectors of Jacksonville, increasing literacy among the most vulnerable children in our city, increasing access to mental health services, and perhaps most importantly, dismantling the blatantly racist school-to-prison pipeline that destroys communities and feeds an ever-growing prison industrial complex in this country that has quite literally become the modern-day expression of race and class-based slavery. I don't think it's a stretch to say that among all of its member congregations, UUCJ is iCare's strongest supporter. And frankly, that is part of the reason why I have been asked by iCare's current leadership to become its co-president in 2016. Your support of this church is what empowers me as this church's minister to be able to accept that position. And I will tell all of you right here and now that I plan to do whatever I can to grow iCare's base, to make it an even stronger, an even louder voice demanding justice from our elected city leaders. UUCJ is also a partner of the Jacksonville Coalition for Equality. With and through that coalition, UUCJ is going to ensure that the Jacksonville City Council passes an amendment to our city's human rights ordinance that will protect the rights of the gay and lesbian community in our city. That is going to happen. UUCJ also feeds the hungry right here in Arlington through our community garden. The community garden, as many of you know, is the only source of fresh fruits and vegetables that the Arlington Food Bank has. UUCJ is also helping to stop the spread of HIV and AIDS in this community. Many of you know this, but some of our newer members and guests might not, but we host a free HIV testing clinic in our South Wing. It is open to anyone in the community. If you didn't know this, know it today. The city of Jacksonville has the third highest HIV/AIDS rate in the nation. Did you not know that? No. This church is proudly doing its part to fight that epidemic in our city. And that is just a small sample of the many ways that this church lives its faith and is changing our world for the better. And as we look forward to 2016, we are actively seeking ways to expand those opportunities and expand our influence. Just this year, we have seen the formation of a new team here at the church, the Compassionate Service Team. This team is finding ways to turn our church's mission statement from an aspiration to a reality. They recently started by building a bridge to our neighbors in the apartment complex just next door. It's this kind of work that will help revitalize our greater community here in Arlington, building relationships, strengthening that web of interconnection that binds all of us together. I believe with my whole heart that actively and intentionally becoming better neighbors in our community will be a transformative experience for this congregation. And that is what is going to make us truly a missional church. It is an exciting time to be a member of UUCJ. Your investments of time, talent, and treasure are, in fact, making this world a better place. But this morning, I don't want to merely focus on the idea of investments. I think I'm Donald Trumped out. I'm not feeling like a very good capitalist this year. Yes, UUCJ is an investment, and a good one. But there are a lot of good investments out there, a lot of very deserving 501c3s out there that do very good work, that also, like us, represent very deserving causes. But see, that right there is the big difference between this church and those charities. We're actually not a cause, we're a community. For better or worse, we have cast together our lots, our fortunes, our lives. Each one of us here today has eschewed the easy path of individualism, of insularity, of apartness, of solitude. Instead, we have chosen the road less traveled, the path of fellowship, of comradeship, of brotherhood and sisterhood, of covenanted community bound by love. God, it's a hard path, ain't it? It's enough to drive you crazy some days when you're dealing with a community of 200 or 300 people, and not just any people, 200 or 300 Unitarian Universalists. We can't even eat a snack together without someone getting rubbed the wrong way. Finding food that is vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, gluten-free, non-GMO, organic, locally and humanely farmed and harvested, it's a small miracle that we ever eat together at all. Thank God we have coffee. Free trade coffee. And personality conflicts, oh, you bet. Different ideas of what things we should be doing, how we should be doing those things, philosophical arguments about whether those things even ontologically exist. And now, granted, that's mostly me and Thomas arguing on that last point, but still, you get the idea. Community is maddening. Working with others together is endless frustration. It requires constant compromise of our individual wants and desires, constant sacrifice. It's terribly inefficient, terribly resistant to change. There are days you just want to throw up your hands and run away. So why do we all stick with it? Well, one answer might be that we're all masochists. That's the cynical answer, probably not entirely untrue. But the other answer, which I prefer, is that deep down, we all recognize that we need each other. If we are to live the kind of lives that will eventually, ultimately, allow each of us to one day lay down and take our final rest with a smile of satisfaction on our faces, then we need each other. I believe the human experience would not be complete without love. And love cannot happen in solitude. Love cannot exist in a vacuum. A defining characteristic of love is that it both gives and receives, which means that love requires both a giver and a receiver. And that is what this church, this beloved community we call UUCJ, offers to each of us, the opportunity to both give and receive love. And that may be the most important thing that this church offers, not only to us, but also to our children, the generation that will succeed us. When I myself was a child, I went to church. And to this day, 3 decades later, I still think back and remember all these adults, young adults, middle-aged adults, the elders, especially the elders. I remember the words of wisdom they passed on to me, the undeserved, unearned respect they graciously showed me every week, the very true and real love that they offered me. And I know it was true and real love because they didn't have to be giving it to me. They weren't paid to be with me and pay attention to me like my school teachers. They weren't obligated to love me like my biological family connected to me by blood. They were a part of my life because they wanted to be. For them, it was freely chosen, which made it so much more valuable to me. I remember every Sunday morning hearing their kind words to me. I remember seeing their smiles of approval, smiles of acceptance. I remember the warmth I felt shaking their hands and always thinking how their wrinkled skin felt so wonderfully like paper. 3 decades later, I still treasure those memories. And I have no misunderstandings about how important those relationships were to my own spiritual and moral development. And as a parent now, I'm so happy to know that my daughters will have similar memories that will stay with them for a lifetime because of you. As an adult now, I think, how blessed am I and how blessed are you to be able to create similar memories in the minds and hearts of our children and youth here in this community. And I promise you that each of our children will absolutely remember the kindnesses that you showed them here on Sunday mornings. I think it's important for us to think about our future generations. That's something that churches are uniquely positioned to do because church is already a place that helps give each of us meaning and grounding and direction in our relentless, inexorable journeys forward through time. We humans are temporal beings. We are creatures of the calendar. In our church community, we mark and commemorate the cyclical passage of time by our observation of holy days, or holidays, to use the more secularized term. It's also in the context of our church community that we celebrate the important sacred milestones of our own individual lives, the dedication of our children, the marriage of our young, and for many of us, one day, This church is where our loved ones will gather together to celebrate all that we have accomplished in this life and say their final goodbyes to us. This is the power and the beauty of beloved community, specifically the beloved community known as church. UUCJ is our church community, ours, but not ours alone. We are not the first to own this community, and we will not be the last. We are merely the current and latest generation to inherit this gift. This congregation was founded in 1906 by Jacksonville Mayor and later U.S. Senator Duncan Fletcher. Our roots go back 109 years, and the older I get, the more I come to value the work, the accomplishments, and the sacrifices of those who came before me. This congregation has a proud history of nurturing spiritual growth in its members and changing the world. And I personally want to walk worthy of all those who came before me here. And walking worthy of them means more than simply maintaining the foundation they created for us. It means building upon their foundation to reach even greater heights. When we look at missional communities like ours from the long view of history, that is what each generation is called to do. Build upon the foundation of our ancestors to reach even greater heights, and then pass it on to the next generation so they can build on our work and reach even higher. In order to accomplish this goal, I am asking you to give. I believe with my whole heart that this beloved community known as UUCJ is worthy of your giving. I would not ask you to give if I did not believe that. Next Sunday, we're going to have a lot of fun. We are going to celebrate, and in the midst of that celebration, we're all going to place our financial commitment forms in a big blue boat, just like last year. And as you consider this week how much you will promise to give, I ask you to really consider what this community means to you, the kind of legacy you want to leave for the next generation, and to dream for just a moment of the kind of world that we are going to create together. Blessed be.